Hello everyone, this is Logic with Evo, and today I'll be doing Derivations 1.034 and 1.040 from the Logic software. The first, the first one we'll do is 1.034. We have three premises on the left over here, and underneath is our conclusion line. Let's begin with our show conc line, which is just us showing our conclusion. Next, we make our assumption. We can't quite do as CD because it's not a conditional, so we must do as ID. It gives us the double negation of t, but we can resolve this with 2dn, giving us just t. Now looking at our premises, let's just repeat them. Premise 1 is just S2P brackets to R. I'll actually zoom in, make it a little bit easier to read. Premise 2 is the negation of R. If you notice, lines 4 and 5 can be put together with MC to give us the negation of S2P as a whole. Looking at premise 3, we'll recognize that there's not much more we can do for these rules. We cannot modus tollens anything, nor modus ponens. So we'll have to have an alternative option. Right now, our best option is to show, well, we have three options to go with. We can either do a show unneg line, show the not negation form of something, show ant, show the antecedent, or show the negation of the consequence. This is our last resort. It's typically much messier. Let's go with show unneg. For line 6, we can write down, well, on line 8, we can write down show unneg line 6. What that gives us is a brand new show line, which is S2P. And we can begin our little assume lines. As CD will give us just S by itself. We can do another show cons line, and show P, and assume ID is 1. A few more lines. Well, quite a bit more. So now we're here. Oh, whoops. Negation P. Now we're here. Now we can go ahead and do show ant. For which line? Well, line 7, of course. Show the antecedent of line 7 will allow us to see that with P to Q, all we need to do is add CD it, and we're given P by itself. What's great is, on line 11, we see the opposite of it, the negation of P. So all we need to do is bring back down line 11, and 13, 14, ID, and close off that little show line, little show box. Fantastic. So now we have line 12 to use. We can just plug it in with line 7, P to Q to T to R, with modus ponens. So all we need to do is write 7, 12, MP, and move this other side. So lines, I should have made more lines. 20. So now we get T to R. You may remember earlier, we actually had T by itself. So let's go ahead and repeat down T with 3R and do 16, 17 modus ponens. In this we get R by itself, which is grand, because in line 5 we had the negation of R. It's also our second premise. So we can do PR2, line 18, ID, which because they are opposites, is perfectly sound for closing the show box. On line 10, do not want to do that, whoops. On line 10, we have now S to P to show. Because we have its consequent, P by itself in line 10, we can go ahead and write down 10 C D. That's enough to go ahead and close this show box. Well, that won't quite work, so I'll just return that. That's fine. Brilliant. And what's great is, under every single circumstance, whenever you are able to show, or prove rather, a show unneg line, and you can cross it out and complete a box, 100% of the times, whatever is right here, the numbers, so in this case line 6, and the show line's number, line 8, you can always write down its number 6, in this case 68 ID, because they are exact opposites for one another. In doing so, you'll bring it up to whatever the last show line was, which in our case is opposite T. Whoa, wicked, is line 2. And that answers the first one. Those are the steps for you. And now we can go on to the next. Looks like I might need more paper. Let's try doing this in one step. Oops, little spoiler alert. How do I delete this? Wow, delete. Brilliant. The second one involves a little bit more work, but not impossible. Our first premise is the negation of P to Q. The second one is R to S, all negated of course. Third one is T to P to S. The fourth one is the negation of U to R to Q. Our conclusion line is the negation of a negation T negation U. This one's a little fun, genuinely. I'll write down little numbers here. We'll definitely need more later, but I'll get to that as we continue. Woo. And perfect. Well, I thought so. Perfect. So, let's write our show conc line on the right side and do show this little mess. What's neat is you can actually go ahead and do an as ID, assume indirect derivation, because even though it gives you another negation in front of it, as is here, writing to the end gets rid of them. Whoops, don't need a bracket. Grand. So now we have this line on line 3. None of the other premises can be put in for us to use modus ponens or modus tollens. So we need a new show line. There are a few options. I typically recommend trying show unneg first, or you can try show ant, show the antecedent. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see, what might be best practice for a test is sometimes just guessing. Let's try to use show, a lot of good picks here. Let's try to go with show ant, show the antecedent, no, I lied. Show unneg of line premise 2. So we'll write down show unneg premise 2. In this case, we have R to S. We can assume the CD of it, of course, to get R. We can now do show cons of it to get S and assume ID it. We're now given new things to use, but unfortunately, we can't quite use it quite yet. So we look at our next line. We have up here T to P to S. Well, if we could get T by itself, could we use it? If we had a line that said show T, we could assume ID it and get the negation of T, which would fit perfectly in line 3. So let's try that. Show ant premise 3. So now you have a show line with T. We can assume ID it, so you get the negation of T and line 3. So 3R is just the negation of T to the negation of U. How grand, because 9, 10, and P gives us the negation of U that because of premise 4, we can plug in with MP to give us R to Q. So let's have to write down more lines. Grand. What's fantastic here is that on line 5, we already have R by itself. Let's do 5R, we have R, 12, 13, and P gives us Q by itself. But hey, can we quite use Q just yet? Not really. We need one more show line. We've actually gone ahead and used premise 4 pretty thoroughly. We've already looked at premise 2 and premise 3, so exists the last one, premise 1. Let's just do a nice show unneg of premise 1. And what that says is, what is it? Here. Show P to Q. We can do a nice little steps here, add CD, get P by itself, show cons to get show Q, and assume ID it to get the negation of Q. I'll give you a second to recognize what our next step might be as I make more lines, of course. Hope you saw it, because on line 14 is Q by itself. And for the rule of contradiction, or ID, we need two opposites, ID beside it, to close the show box. That's line 1. That's show box 1 to clear. Now let's look at the next one. Well, we just did a show cons, and 17 is the consequent of the last show line. So, we're at 17, CD. And that closes that show line. Look at that, we're on a roll. Because we did a show unneg line and proved it, we can go ahead and write line 15 and whatever we just proved its unnegated form was. So premise 1, because they are opposites, ID. And that'll bring us up to show T. It's a little bit of a mess, but yeah, believe me here. Fantastic. So now we have T by itself. Could we plug it in anywhere? Yes. We can plug T in on premise 3. If we wrote down 8, premise 3, and P. 23, 24, 25, 26. Perfect. And doing so gives us P to S as we see in premise 3. Anything else from here? Of course. Line 7 is a negation of S. So we can plug that in there. Line 7 are the negation of S. 23, 24, MT for the negation of P. But doesn't it look like we're stuck in the same place again? We can't go ahead and use any more lines. There's no more exponents left for us to use. But what we can do is use the same sort of show line strat from earlier once again. How? We can do a show unneg of premise 1. And that's the one that went show P to Q. It's 29, and we're almost done, believe it or not. Because, assuming the CD of this is just P by itself, and with line 25 being the negation of P, 27 and 28 together are contradictions. So you can use the rule of ID there to close out that box. And that's fantastic, because whenever you do a show unneg, once again, you can always bring that line and its original form and ID it together. So in this case, we have, I'll do premise 1 repeats so we can make it more cleaner for us to look at. We have P to Q, but all negated. 31, and now we have 26, 30, ID, which will close up our boxes up here all the way to show S. Well, it's getting a little messy because we're getting more workings done, but gotta believe me here. Oh, that's not nice. Second two. Brilliant. Not perfect, but definitely more cleaner. Line 6, as we see here, is just a consequent of the next show line, R to S. So, all we need now is 6 CD, and that will bring us up to this show box. And to really emphasize the point and bring it home, whenever you are able to prove a show unneg, as you see in line 4, whatever the premise was, or whatever it was that you just showed its unnegated form of, you can always throw an ID. In this case, we can do line 4, premise 2, ID, because they are exact opposites. And after that, all the way to the top, and let's go home happy. it resolves the question we have there. Brilliant. So, little hints once again. For 1.034 and 1.040, some of the best pieces of advice I can give you guys is try using the lines show unneg and show ant. Why? Well, they allow you to, for any line number or premise that is not a show line, you can either show its, in this case, you can either show this part of it, or actually, let me do another way around. You can either show the line not negated, so show P to Q, or let's say the antecedents like this, you can make it so it's a show the negation of P. Once again, you can only do these two things for sentences and lines that are not already show lines. You cannot go ahead and do, well, let's say my show line was P to Q. And let's say line number 1. And on line number 2, I write, well, show ant, line 1. You cannot do this. It's wrong. I will give you a 0. I don't know. That's it. Yeah, any questions, feel free to reach out to me. It's iessam@mon.ca. Office hours are Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 1 to 2 probably. I think so. In AA 3068 or 3081. Okay, guys. Bye.